Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our channel, Stoicism Tell Me. Love doesn't always vanish with shouting matches or slammed doors. More often it disappears in stillness. It slips away quietly, without warning, like a gentle breeze closing a chapter before we realize the page has turned. You see the same face, hear the same familiar voice, but the tenderness is missing. What once flowed effortlessly between two hearts now feels strained, uncertain. There's no clear explanation, just a change in the air. Most people don't say, "I don't love you anymore." They just stop expressing it. Not out of cruelty, but because something inside them has shifted. Their attention drifts. Their heart begins to wander, not with rage, but with indifference. And somehow, that's more painful. Have you ever stood next to someone you love deeply and felt completely unseen, as if your body was present, but your spirit invisible? No arguments, no final words, just silence stretching out like distance between two shores. The Stoic Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Our hurt often stems not from their withdrawal, but from our refusal to accept it. We cling to the past, to how things were, while reality quietly drifts further away. Today, we explore an honest truth, that love, fading, does not shout. It whispers, and if you're willing to notice, it reveals itself in two distinct ways, not cruelly, not loudly, but clearly. Let me take you to a quiet village where one man faced the deepest fear of anyone who has ever truly loved. He didn't learn through betrayal or harsh words, but through something quieter, the emptiness that says more than words ever could. In his story, we'll uncover the first two signs that someone has fallen out of love: the tale of a farmer and the falling leaves. In a peaceful village surrounded by hills and wide open fields lived a simple man named Elias. A farmer of humble means, he found joy in the rhythm of his days, rising with the sun, working the land, and returning home each evening to the person who made it all feel worth it. Lyanna, his wife, his peace, his reason. Their life was far from perfect, but it was theirs, filled with shared smiles over supper, laughter in the garden, whispered stories before sleep. As time passed and their faces changed, Elias believed their hearts had remained the same. Until one autumn, something began to shift. It wasn't sudden. There was no breaking point, no betrayal, just quiet. Her voice grew softer. Her eyes seemed distant. The meals she once waited to share were left on the table without a word. She stopped asking how his day had been. She offered less and less of her own. At first, Elias thought it was exhaustion, perhaps the changing season, or a mood that would pass. But as the days stretched into weeks, the distance widened. Her thoughts seemed elsewhere, and she no longer brought them home. He tried to reach her. He brought back the bread she loved from the market. He tended the garden with care, read aloud her favorite lines from the book they once adored. But the smiles she gave were no longer from the heart. They were polite, distant, like someone watching a stranger play a role she no longer believed in. Elias didn't tell anyone, not his neighbors, not his brother. Instead, one morning he packed a small bag and walked into the forest. There, it was said, lived a man known only as the Watcher, a quiet soul who had once loved and lost and chose a life of solitude among the trees. People came to him not for answers, but for clarity. Elias found him sitting on a bench, watching the trees shed their leaves. The Watcher said nothing, just gestured for Elias to sit. For a long time, they watched the leaves fall, one by one, in silence. Then Elias spoke. I think she no longer loves me. But she hasn't said it. She's still here, and yet I feel alone. The watcher nodded. When the wind shifts, the leaves fall. They don't ask. They don't explain. They just know their season has ended. Elias looked at the earth. So how do I know? How can I be sure? The watcher held up a fallen leaf. Love doesn't end with thunder. It fades like the green of a leaf. Slowly, then all at once. First the color, then the strength, until it lets go. He rose and walked to a tree on the edge of the clearing. This tree has stood longer than I have. Each year, it releases what no longer serves it. Not with sorrow, but with understanding. Elias followed, eyes tracing the branches above. The watcher spoke again. You want certainty, but love's absence is not always spoken. Don't press her for answers. Don't chase clarity from someone still unclear within herself. Watch. Listen. The signs will appear. He placed the leaf in Elias's palm, and when they do, you won't need to ask. You'll already know. In that clearing, beneath the shedding trees, Elias understood something he had long feared. That love, like all things in nature, comes in seasons, and when it fades, though the world doesn't announce it, it speaks in stillness, in cooler mornings, in shorter words, in the places once warm, now turning cold. It's not the loss of love that breaks us, but the quiet way it changes shape. The strength lies not in forcing it to stay, but in noticing and allowing it to go. And in the fall of those first leaves, two signs always come. Always. The first, they stop sharing their inner world. When Elias returned to the village, everything looked the same. Liana was there. She cooked. She cleaned. She asked about the harvest, but something essential was missing, and now that Elias had been taught to listen, he could hear what had been silenced. It was in the pauses, the lack of questions, the absence of dreams. Their once endless conversations had shrunk into practical exchanges. Safe, surface level, emotionless. She no longer invited him into her thoughts, not with anger, not with lies, but with silence. Elias remembered when they would sit beside the fire, talking for hours, sharing hopes, confessions, even meaningless details that somehow made them feel more connected. Now she nodded, instead of replying. She told him what was necessary, nothing more. There was a time he asked her what had made her smile that day. She paused, seemed unsure, and finally said, "Nothing special." The moment slipped by, but it left behind a chill. It was like reaching for a familiar doorknob, only to find the door locked. No warning, no reason. When someone stops letting you into their inner world, it's not always because they're hiding something. Often it's because they no longer feel moved to invite you in. What once felt like a bridge between two souls becomes a one-way street. You keep reaching, but there's no hand reaching back. It isn't dramatic, it isn't cruel, but it's undeniable. The watcher had spoken of this moment. He called it the closing of the gate. He told Elias that every person carries within them a hidden garden, a space of feelings, memories, thoughts. To love someone is to be welcomed into that garden, to walk among its beauty, to tend it gently. But when that love begins to slip away, the gate doesn't slam shut. It simply stops opening, not with words, not with fury, just quietly. It closes when they no longer tell you how their day really went, when they leave out the little details they once rushed to share, when they stop seeking your thoughts, not because they don't care about your opinion, but because it no longer feels like it belongs in their own. Elias saw it now. She had drawn back behind walls he once walked through freely. She still offered him tea. She still gave him small smiles. But her heart, her stories, her spark, they were elsewhere. What once made her laugh now passed in silence. Her joys and worries used to land gently in his hands. Now they never arrived at all. That absence, more than any spoken word, told him the truth. The Stoic Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen more than we speak." But what happens when there's nothing left to listen to? What do you do when the person you love no longer gives you their world? The answer is hard, but clear. You accept it. The Stoics taught that pain is not born from the event itself, but from the meaning we attach to it. When someone stops opening up, the wound isn't their silence. It's our expectation that they should still speak, still trust, still share. But the truth is, we never own someone else's thoughts. We are guests there, always. And when the door is no longer open, it's not our role to break it down. It's our place to step back with grace. So Elias stopped asking, not from resentment, but from understanding. He no longer searched for warmth where there was only habit. He didn't press her for stories she no longer wanted to tell. Instead, he watched. And what he saw was not rejection, but retreat. The truth no longer lived in what she said, but in what she had stopped saying. And that was the first sign. When love begins to slip away, it goes quiet first. They stop sharing their soul, their hopes, their worries. You are still present in their routine, but absent from their thoughts. And when you are no longer welcome in someone's inner world, their outward actions will slowly start to reflect that change. The first leaf falls. The garden gate is closed. Second sign, they begin to compare, quietly. It was a late afternoon when Elias saw it again. They walked through the village market, as they had so many times before. Once their footsteps matched. They used to pause together, laugh at odd displays, pick out herbs and spices in sync. But today, her eyes weren't on the stalls or the produce. They drifted to other people. He saw her watching a young couple laughing outside the bakery. Her face didn't show longing or sadness, just recognition, a quiet gaze toward something that used to be familiar, something that was once hers. Later that day, by the village well, she made a small remark about another woman's dress. Simple, offhand, but the tone of it lodged itself in Elias's chest, like he had just been held next to someone else and quietly found not enough. She hadn't said anything cruel. She hadn't criticized him. Yet in every lingering glance, in every moment her focus shifted away. Elias felt the sting of silent comparison. It's a quiet undoing. When someone begins to fall out of love, they often start seeing others through a lens of admiration. Not boldly, not angrily, but subtly. They notice what others have, what they miss, what you used to offer, and slowly you start to feel it. The laughter you once shared becomes less bright. Your quirks once adored now seem to irritate. Your presence no longer comforts. It competes. The Watcher had spoken of this too. He once told Elias a tale of a man who carved a statue of his beloved from memory. Over time, he began altering it. A straighter nose, a softer smile, brighter eyes. He claimed it was still her, but in truth, it was someone else. Someone imagined. This is what comparison does. It replaces what is real with what is ideal. It takes love and turns it into a mirror of absence. Gratitude becomes longing. Familiarity becomes restlessness. And it never begins with arguments. It starts with glances, with pauses, with sighs, with the way their attention lights up for others and dims for you, with how they begin to see you not as someone they chose, but as someone they settled for. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Be content to appear as you are." But when the person beside you is no longer content with who you are, that dissatisfaction leaks through, not with shouts, but with silence. Elias began to feel it everywhere. In public, Liana no longer reached for his hand. She smiled more at strangers than at him. She admired things he couldn't give her, without ever asking him to. The pain of being silently measured, of being seen yet passed over, is a quiet ache. It's the loneliness of standing next to someone who is already imagining someone else. The Stoics remind us that we cannot control the gaze of another. We can only choose not to lose ourselves chasing it. When someone compares us to others, it's not our job to compete. It's our choice to walk away from performance and return to truth. Because love that must be earned by being someone else is not love. It's a role, and we are not actors. When comparison begins, it signals that something deeper is missing, and that second leaf has fallen. You begin to seek in others what you once saw in the person beside you, and when they begin to do the same, when their eyes look outward instead of toward you, that is the second sign. The heart has turned. Elias never accused Liana, never pleaded with her to see him differently. He simply observed, and what he saw was a woman who still occupied the same space, but whose spirit was already fading into the distance. Love is born in admiration, but it fades when that admiration finds a new place to land. And the deepest wound is not in being replaced. It's in being slowly erased while still standing in the same room. That is how the second leaf falls, not with words or finality, but with the quiet glance of someone who no longer truly sees you. So, what should one do when the signs become clear? After many days of silence, Elias returned to the forest. He found the watcher on the same bench, facing the same line of trees, now even barer than before. Elias sat beside him, the silence resting heavily between them. "I've seen it," he said. "She no longer brings her heart to me. I see her comparing me to things I'm not. What now?" The watcher didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached to the ground, gathered a handful of dry leaves, and let them fall through his fingers one by one. He watched them float on the wind, effortless, unresisting. "You cannot hold the wind," he said at last, "and you cannot ask a leaf to cling to a branch that no longer gives it life." Elias dropped his gaze. "Should I fight for her? Ask her to stay?" The watcher's eyes softened. "You may ask, you may weep, you may speak every truth your heart carries. But if she has already left in spirit, your words will not reach her. You wouldn't be speaking to her, you'd be speaking to a memory. That is the sorrow of love, not its ending, but our refusal to accept that it has already changed." The Stoics remind us, strength lies in accepting what is, not in clinging to what was. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only goal worth pursuing, and it begins with releasing what is beyond our grasp. You cannot dictate the feelings of another. You cannot demand love's return. You cannot hold on to someone whose path has already turned. But you can hold on to something more precious, yourself." Elias was quiet. "And how do I begin? By not asking to be seen, by not diminishing your worth to be remembered, by choosing calm over desperation. If someone wishes to leave, do not follow them into the shadows. Let them walk, and if they find their way back, let it be because they chose to. not because you begged them to stay, and if they do not return, you will still be whole. You will still be enough. Letting go is not a sign that we didn't care. It's proof that we did. It's choosing not to cage what longs to be free. It's knowing that love held by force is not love. It is fear. It is choosing truth over illusion, choosing to honor what was without becoming prisoner to it. "So what should I do tomorrow?" Elias asked. The watcher looked toward the horizon. "You rise. You tend your land. You greet the morning as your own, because your life is still yours, even if someone else has walked away from it. Let them go, Elias. But more importantly, choose yourself. Choose to build a life that thrives with or without them, because what you must never surrender is your own soul in trying to keep someone else's heart. That is Stoic strength, not apathy, but courage. The courage to stay rooted when all around you drifts. The strength to walk forward, even when your footsteps echo alone. Elias did not return home with bitterness. He asked no questions. He made no accusations. He simply lived differently. He still rose with the sun. He still worked the fields. But something had changed. A quietness now lived in him, not empty, but settled. Not from certainty, but from release. He stopped waiting for her to return with warmth. He stopped searching her expressions for the love that once glowed there. He accepted the stillness, and in doing so, something shifted inside him. One morning, standing at the edge of his land, he looked out over the rows of crops. The season had turned. The air was cooler. The trees were bare. But the earth still breathed, and so did he. He caught his own reflection in the glass of their home, not as a man who had been abandoned, but as a man who had not abandoned himself. Love doesn't always leave. Sometimes it transforms. Sometimes it lives on as memory. Sometimes it stays as a lesson, but it always shapes us. The Stoics taught us that nothing we have is truly ours. Not possessions, not people, not even the love we hope will stay. What we have is now. The power to respond with grace, the strength to release with dignity. Elias learned that letting go was not surrender. It was mastery. It was faith in the unfolding of life, in his own wholeness, in knowing that what leaves does not define us. And in that gentle surrender, he found something more lasting than closure. He found peace. He walked forward, not in defeat, but in truth. Now I ask you, have you seen these signs in your life? Have you felt the quiet pull of someone drifting from you? Have you noticed the subtle comparisons that whispered you were no longer enough? If so, know this, you are not alone. We have all stood in that stillness, unsure whether to fight or release, unsure if letting go is weakness or wisdom. So I invite you to reflect. Take a moment. Look inward. Share your story. In doing so, you heal not just yourself, but others who still stand where you once did. Tell us how you found the strength to let go, or how you are still searching for it. Because wisdom is not just words. It is experience. It is the courage to speak, so others may walk their own path with clarity. And remember, love is never a possession. It is a presence, and sometimes its highest expression is letting it go.